Welcome. Today, we are going to calibrate a matrix input. Most field calibrations skip the zero and span and only perform the trim calibration. Zero span are typically reserved for 1. Factory calibration, 2. Changing TC types, 3. For non-TC analog signals, and lastly, 4. When trim alone can't correct a TC input. Let's start the process by going into the main menu. We will then log in using the number 2. Once logged in, slide down to the calibration option and select it. Then we are going to choose which type of calibration we are doing. We are going to do 0 and span for the analog inputs. Click Edit and select which module if you have multiple available. Select that module specifically and wait for the screen to update. From here, we are going to select which input we are going to calibrate. We can do these one at a time, or if we have multiple plugs and wires, we can do multiple at a time. We are choosing input 1, and we're going to calibrate for 0. This is currently displaying what it's measuring on the input. So we're going to source to it 0 volts. This would be sourcing through copper wire to the analog input 1 of module 1, 0 volts DC. Then when we need to do a span calibration, we would come in and adjust to 72 millivolts. This is sourcing through copper wire 72 millivolts for the span input of input 1 calibration. Once we see that the input is reading what we're sourcing in for 0 volts for a 0 calibration through copper wire, select the Calibrate button. It confirms we are performing a 0 calibration against a signal of 0 volts. We are sure, and then we wait for the progress meter to advance as the calibration processes. We can now monitor this and watch for the update from the calibration process to be displayed. It may take up to 30 seconds. There's our update. Next, if we want to span calibrate the input, we would select span. It is going to then look at the input we have selected and see what the input is set for. If it is a TC or a voltage. In this case, input 1 is set for K thermocouple, so we need to now source in 72 millivolts to this input. If we sourced in 72 and this input read 72 exactly, we have then verified the input is accurate. In this case, it's not reading 72 exactly, so if we'd like to calibrate it, we'd then select the Calibrate button and confirm that we are sourcing in and forming a span calibration, 72 millivolts. Click Yes, and we let it process. The whole purpose of this is to verify the input is reading accurate. Once the calibration process is complete, you then give a couple seconds for the input to update. It is now reading 72 millivolts. This is the 0 and span of the input. If we need to check to make sure that the trim input is accurate, we would select Trim Analog Inputs. Then select the module we are working with if there is more than one. In here, we will select the box we are working with. In our case, we are working with Analog Input 1. We are going to source through a TC wire that is the same as what the input is set for. In this case, input 1 is set for a K thermocouple, so we are going to source through KTC wire to analog input 1. For the trim adjust, we are sourcing through a K thermocouple wire into input 1, and we are sourcing through the K wire 1000 degrees for performing the trim adjust on the analog input module. We have sourced to analog input 1 through a KTC wire that is 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. Our input is measuring at 1007, so we are now going to enter in the temperature we are sourcing. We are now inputting 1000 degrees into input 1, and we are going to select Calibrate. It is asking if we want to confirm and select Yes and let the process begin. Be patient with this process, it may take 30 seconds. Once the process is complete, we can see and verify the signal being sourced in. Check performance at both the upper and lower limits, but do not repeat the calibration, as the unit only supports a single calibration point. Sourcing 1,500 degrees and we are reading 1,498. Sourcing 2,000 degrees and we are measuring 1,997. Sourcing 500 degrees and we're reading 497. If necessary, another trim adjust may be performed if we wanted to do lower or higher temperatures. We would then just edit the temperature being sourced in and then select the Calibrate button. Once you are satisfied with the zero and span, as well as trim, you would then select the X to close out the calibration process. Hit the X to return to the main menu and the X to return to the main screen. You can check your temperature being sourced in either at your PV, or if you have more than one module, you can check the board status and this will tell you each input and how they are reading. If you have any questions, please reach out to our team at 513-772-0060. We're happy to help.